My name is Alexandra Alex Morrison, and I'm the family disappointment. At least that's what my older brother James has told everyone for the past 6 years. The sister who never worked a real job. The one who lives off her trust fund. The black sheep who somehow has money but no ambition, no drive, no real accomplishments. What James doesn't know, what nobody in my family knows, is that I'm the reason his logistics company exists at all. I'm 34 years old. I graduated from MIT with degrees in computer science and applied mathematics. At 23, I co-founded a data analytics startup called Meridian Systems with 2 classmates. At 26, we sold it to Amazon for $180 million. My share after taxes was $52 million. At 27, I became an angel investor. For the past 7 years, I've invested in 43 companies. 12 have failed. 15 are still operating. 16 have been acquired or gone public. My current portfolio is worth approximately $340 million. I'm one of the most successful angel investors under 40 in the Boston tech scene. I'm also completely invisible to my family. They think I'm living off a modest trust fund our grandmother left me, $2 million that generates about $80,000 a year in dividends. They think I spend my days doing yoga, meeting friends for lunch, and generally floating through life without purpose. They think this because I let them think it. Why? Because I learned early that my family couldn't handle my success. When I sold Meridian Systems at 26, I was so excited I told everyone immediately. I flew home to Chicago for a family dinner and announced that I'd just become a multimillionaire. My father said, "Well, don't let it go to your head." My mother said, "That's nice, dear. James, tell everyone about your promotion." My brother James, who was 29 at the time and working as a regional manager at a freight company, went silent for the rest of the dinner. 3 weeks later he stopped returning my calls. I learned that my success made them uncomfortable. It disrupted the family narrative where James was the golden child, Harvard MBA rising corporate star, the son who'd make them proud. My unexpected windfall threw everything off balance. So I became invisible instead. I moved to a modest apartment in Cambridge. I drove a 5-year-old Prius. I dressed in jeans and sweaters. When family asked what I did all day, I'd shrug and say, consulting projects here and there. Nothing exciting. And I started investing. One of my first major investments was in my brother's dream. James had always wanted to start his own business. In 2018, he left his corporate job to launch Anderson Logistics, a freight and supply chain management company. He had industry experience, good relationships, and a solid business plan. What he didn't have was capital. He'd saved $200,000, but he needed $2.5 million to get started. Warehouse space, trucks, technology systems, working capital, staff. He spent 6 months pitching investors and getting rejected. The logistics industry is capital-intensive and competitive. Nobody wanted to take the risk on a first-time founder. I watched him struggle. Watched his confidence erode. Watched him come to family dinners looking exhausted and defeated. So I created Apex Capital Partners, an LLC registered in Delaware with me as the managing member but with an anonymous structure. I had my attorney reach out to James with a term sheet, $2.3 million in exchange for 30% equity, with favorable terms and patient capital expectations. James was ecstatic. He called me that night, "Alex, you won't believe it. I got funding. Some investment firm called Apex Capital. They believe in the business." "That's amazing, James. I'm so happy for you. Maybe I can finally prove to everyone that I'm not just Dad's disappointment son who left a good corporate job." I remember feeling a pang at that. James, the golden child, also felt like a disappointment. "You're not a disappointment," I told him. "You're following your dream. That takes courage." "Thanks, sis. That means a lot." That was 2018. 6 years ago. Anderson Logistics launched in January 2019. It was rough at first. Logistics always is. The margins are thin, the competition fierce, the operations complex. James worked 80-hour weeks. There were months when the company barely broke even. But my capital gave him runway. While competitors burned out or got acquired, James had the breathing room to build properly. To hire good people. To invest in the right technology. To weather the inevitable storms. By 2020, Anderson Logistics was profitable. By 2022, they'd grown to 40 employees and $18 million in annual revenue. By 2024, they were at 70 employees and $35 million in revenue. James was successful. His company was thriving. And he had no idea I was the reason any of it existed. The quarterly reports came through my attorney to Apex Capital Partners. The dividends, James paid distributions to shareholders starting in 2022, went into my investment accounts. We'd structured it so that Apex had a board seat which my attorney occupied. James thought he was answering to some anonymous investment firm in Delaware. He never suspected his Freeloader sister was his largest investor. By 2024, my investment portfolio had grown substantially. The $52 million from Meridian Systems had become $340 million through careful angel investing, some successful exits and compound growth. My daily routine looked like this. Wake up at 6 a.m. Review overnight market movements and portfolio updates. Coffee while reading pitch decks from founders seeking investment. Gym at 9 a.m. Meetings with founders, attorneys, accountants from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. More due diligence in the evening. Dinner with friends or dates. To my family, my daily routine looked like this. Whatever Alex does with all that free time. I'd perfected the art of being underestimated. When family asked what I'd been up to, I'd say things like, "Oh, just had lunch with some friends." I'd actually been at a pitch meeting for a Series A round. Or, took a yoga class. I'd been at my attorney's office reviewing term sheets. Or, nothing much, just a quiet day at home. I'd been on video calls with founders in San Francisco and London. My family had built an entire narrative around my life, and I let them believe it because it was easier than dealing with their resentment of my success. James was the worst. As Anderson Logistics grew, so did his ego. He started making comments at family gatherings about real work, and actually building something and earning your success. At Easter 2023, he told our cousin Rachel, "Some people are builders and some people are just coasting." He glanced at me when he said it. At Dad's birthday in July 2023, he announced he'd made the Inc. 5000 list of fastest-growing companies. Everyone applauded. Dad beamed with pride. Mom posted about it on Facebook. I congratulated him genuinely. I was proud. My investment had helped create 70 jobs and a successful company. James responded, "Thanks. It's nice to achieve something through actual hard work, you know?" The implication was clear. Unlike me. But I stayed quiet. I told myself it didn't matter. That I was above needing his validation. Except it did matter and I wasn't above it. Every dismissive comment, every implied criticism, every family gathering where James was celebrated while I was invisible, it accumulated like small cuts. By November 2024, I'd had enough. I'd been tracking Anderson Logistics' performance closely. The company was doing well. $35 million in revenue, $2.8 million in EBITDA, solid growth trajectory. My 30% stake was worth approximately $8.4 million, almost 4 times my initial investment. But something else was happening. James was getting sloppy. The quarterly reports showed concerning trends. Expenses were creeping up faster than revenue. There were luxury expenditures that didn't make business sense. $180,000 for executive vehicles, $95,000 for a leadership retreat at a resort in Cabo, $45,000 for office renovations that seemed purely cosmetic. James had also started taking a much larger salary, $520,000 annually, up from $180,000 just 2 years earlier. For a company doing $35 million in revenue, that was aggressive. I mentioned this to my attorney Richard Chin during one of our quarterly reviews. "It's concerning," Richard agreed. "The company is profitable, but James is treating it like his personal piggy bank. The board should be pushing back." "You're the board," I pointed out. "I represent Apex's interests, but I'm one voice. James has convinced the other shareholders, smaller angels who came in later rounds, that this is normal for a founder CEO. Is it? Not at this scale. He's flying too close to the sun." I made a decision then. Set up a meeting with James. I want to discuss the expenditures and the salary. Richard scheduled a board call for mid-November. I listened in, muted, as Richard raised concerns about the burn rate and suggested James reduce his compensation to $350,000 until the company hit $50 million in revenue. James was defensive immediately. "I built this company from nothing. I work 100 hours a week. I deserve to be compensated fairly. No one's questioning your work, Richard said calmly. But the compensation should be proportional to the company's stage. You're paying yourself like you're running a $100 million company. Maybe you should let me run my company the way I see fit. It's not just your company, James. Apex owns 30%. The other angels own another 20%. We have fiduciary responsibilities. Then maybe Apex should find another investment if they're not happy. The call ended tensely. I sat in my apartment afterward, staring at my laptop. James had no idea he was talking about me. No idea that his dismissive attitude toward Apex Capital was directed at his sister, the one he called a freeloader. That's when I decided I was done being invisible. Thanksgiving 2024. My parents hosted at their home in Evanston, the same house I grew up in. The whole family gathered. Parents, James and his wife Michelle, their 2 kids, my younger sister Emma and her fiancé, and me. The house smelled like turkey and pie. Football played on TV in the living room. Kids ran around screaming. It was warm and chaotic and familiar. It was also the day everything exploded. Dinner started normally. We went around the table saying what we were grateful for. Dad was grateful for family. Mom was grateful for health. Emma was grateful for her upcoming wedding. James was grateful for the success of Anderson Logistics and the hard work that built it. When it was my turn, I said, I'm grateful for good investments. James snorted. Must be nice to just watch money grow without actually working for it. James, Mom said mildly. Don't start. I'm just saying some of us build things. Some of us actually contribute to the economy, create jobs, make things happen. And some of us, he looked at me, live off trust funds and call it a career. Michelle touched his arm. Honey, it's Thanksgiving. It's fine, I said calmly. James is entitled to his opinion. It's not an opinion, it's an observation. You're 34 years old, Alex. What do you actually do? The table went quiet except for the kids chattering in the other room. I invest, I said. In what? Your yoga studio membership. Emma jumped in. James, seriously, lay off. Why? Because we're all supposed to pretend that Alex has this mysterious career? We all know the truth. She got lucky with that startup sale years ago and she's been coasting ever since. I set down my fork. Coasting. Yes, coasting. Living off your trust fund, living off the Meridian money, doing nothing productive. You're the family freeloader. Several people gasped. Dad said, James, that's enough. But James was on a roll now, his face flushed with wine and righteousness. I'm just saying what everyone's thinking. I built a company from scratch. I work 80-hour weeks. I employ 70 people. I generated $35 million in revenue this year. What did you do, Alex? Besides, exist. Everyone laughed nervously. Michelle looked mortified. Emma looked furious. My parents looked uncomfortable but didn't contradict him. And something inside me snapped. I pulled out my phone, opened my email app and typed while James continued his rant. Living off your trust fund while we work, he was saying. Some of us actually earn our success. I hit send on the email. Interesting perspective, I said quietly. What's interesting? James challenged. That you think you earned your success entirely on your own. I did. Every dollar Anderson Logistics makes is because of my work, my strategy, my leadership. And the initial $2.3 million that funded it? That was investors who believed in the business. Investors like Apex Capital Partners? His eyes narrowed. How do you know about Apex? Because I read. Because I pay attention. Tell me, James, do you know who owns Apex Capital Partners? Some investment firm in Delaware. Why? I smiled. Actually, Apex Capital Partners is an LLC I created in 2018. I'm the managing member. I'm the anonymous investor who funded your company. I gave you $2.3 million when no one else would. I own 30% of Anderson Logistics. The company you claim you built from scratch exists because I believed in you. Complete silence. James stared at me. That's not possible. It's completely possible. My attorney, Richard Chin, sits on your board representing Apex's interests. We've had quarterly reports for 6 years. Your company is worth approximately $28 million right now, which means my stake is worth $8.4 million. Would you like me to forward you the latest board report? His face had gone pale. You're lying. I pulled up my email on my phone and showed him the message I'd just sent. To Richard Chin and Associates from Alexandra Morrison. Subject: Apex Capital Partners, Anderson Logistics. Richard, please execute immediate withdrawal of all Apex Capital Partners investment from Anderson Logistics. Exercise our contractual right to redeem our 30% equity stake at current fair market valuation of $8.4 million. Liquidation should be completed within 30 days per the terms of our shareholder agreement. Additionally, initiate the change of control provisions. As our withdrawal triggers a major investor exit, James Anderson must find replacement capital or face dilution/restructuring. Proceed immediately. Alex. James's phone started ringing. He looked at the screen. It's Richard. His hand was shaking. You should answer that, I said calmly. He's probably calling to confirm my instructions. James stood up from the table and answered the phone. Richard? What are you talking about? We could all hear Richard's voice through the phone, professional and calm. James, I'm calling to inform you that Apex Capital Partners is exercising its redemption rights. We're withdrawing our full investment from Anderson Logistics. James looked at me, his face a mixture of shock, disbelief, and rising panic. This is insane. You can't just, why? You'll receive the formal notice via email within the hour, Richard continued. You have 30 days to arrange replacement capital or we'll proceed with the contractual provisions for stake liquidation, which may require bringing in new investors or partial company sale. James hung up and stared at me. The Thanksgiving dinner was over. Michelle immediately started crying, not dramatic sobs but quiet tears of fear. She understood what this meant for their family, their lifestyle, their future. Emma looked at me with wide eyes. Alex, did you really just do that? Yes. Dad found his voice. Alexandra, what is happening? I turned to him. What's happening is that I just withdrew my $8.4 million investment from James's company. The investment that's been keeping Anderson Logistics funded for 6 years. The investment James didn't know was mine. But why? Mom asked. Why would you sabotage your brother's business? I'm not sabotaging anything. I'm exercising my legal rights as an investor. James has 30 days to find replacement capital. If his business is as strong as he claims, that shouldn't be a problem. James slumped back into his chair. Alex, you can't do this. The company needs that capital. We've structured our whole financial model around my money? I finished. Yes, I know. I've been reading the quarterly reports for 6 years. Reports that show you paying yourself $520,000 annually, spending $180,000 on luxury vehicles, taking expensive leadership retreats while the company's margins shrink. Those are legitimate business expenses. They're ego expenses. You've been treating Anderson Logistics like your personal piggy bank while calling me a freeloader. Michelle spoke up, her voice shaking. James, what is she talking about? What vehicles? The Tesla and the Range Rover, I said. Registered to the company. Used primarily for personal purposes. Also, the $95,000 leadership retreat in Cabo last March? That was 7 people at a luxury resort for 4 days. Your entire leadership team could have had an equally productive retreat at a Holiday Inn for $8,000. James's jaw tightened. You're making business decisions sound nefarious. I'm pointing out that you've been profligate with money you didn't earn. Money I gave you. And while you've been spending that money, you've been publicly mocking me for supposedly not working. I didn't know it was your money. Would it have mattered? Would you have spent it differently? Or would you have just resented me more? He had no answer. Dad tried to mediate. Alex, I'm sure we can work this out. Your family. James made some unfortunate comments, but... Unfortunate comments? He called me a freeloader at Thanksgiving dinner. He's been calling me that in various ways for 6 years. While I was funding his company. While I was the reason his business existed at all. Emma added quietly, she's not wrong, Dad. James has been pretty brutal about Alex. That's because she acts like she's above everyone. James exploded. Drifting through life, no real job, no real responsibilities. I manage a $340 million investment portfolio. I said, my voice ice. I've invested in 43 companies. 16 have successfully exited. I've created or preserved over 3,000 jobs through my investments. I work every single day analyzing opportunities, conducting due diligence, supporting founders. I'm one of the most successful angel investors in Boston, and I've done it all while staying completely invisible to this family because I knew you couldn't handle it. Then why did you invest in my company? James demanded. Because you're my brother. Because I believed in you. Because I wanted you to succeed. And because I was stupid enough to think that maybe if your business succeeded, you'd finally stop resenting me. I don't resent you. You called me a freeloader, James. Thanksgiving. In front of our entire family. After 6 years of me silently funding your dream. The fight went out of him. He sat there, deflated, while the full reality sank in. Michelle spoke up, her voice small. What happens now? I looked at her. She was innocent in this. A nice woman who'd married my brother and built a life based on what she thought was his self-made success. James has 30 days to find replacement capital. He needs $8.4 million in new investment or he'll face dilution and restructuring. Can he do that? Michelle asked. I shrugged. Maybe. If Anderson Logistics is as successful as James claims, investors should be interested. Of course, they'll do due diligence. They'll see the inflated salary, the luxury expenses, the thinning margins. They might have concerns. You're destroying everything I built, James said quietly. No, James. I'm taking back what I built. You were the operator. I was the capital. Without me, Anderson Logistics never launches. Never makes it through the rough early years. Never gets to $35 million in revenue. I didn't destroy what you built. I'm withdrawing from what we built together, except you never acknowledged it was we in the first place. I stood up from the table. I'm leaving. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone. Emma caught me at the door. Alex, wait. Are you really going to let his company collapse? I'm not letting anything collapse. I'm creating a consequence. If James wants to keep his company, he'll find new investors. If he can't, that's not my responsibility. He's your brother. And I was his sister. The one he mocked and dismissed and called a freeloader while I funded his dream. I'm done being invisible, Emma. I'm done being the family disappointment while secretly being everyone's financial foundation. I drove back to Cambridge in silence, my hands steady on the wheel. The next morning, my phone started ringing at 7 a.m. James. I didn't answer. He called 6 more times before noon. Then Michelle called. Then my mother. I ignored them all. Finally, at 2 p.m. my father called. I answered. Hi, Dad. Alexandra. His voice was formal, disappointed. We need to talk about what happened yesterday. I'm listening. You humiliated your brother. At Thanksgiving in front of the family. You destroyed his company out of spite. I exercised my legal rights as an investor. That's not spite, that's business. It's family, not business. Dad, James made it business when he built his company on my money while publicly mocking me. You don't get to claim family exception after treating family like garbage. He sighed. James is under tremendous stress. The company is everything to him. If you withdraw your investment, it could fail. Then he should have been more careful with how he treated his largest investor. He didn't know. That's not an excuse. He didn't know because he never asked. He never wondered where I got my money. He never questioned why I seemed comfortable despite supposedly not working. He never asked about my life because he was too busy assuming he knew everything about it. Alex, please. He's your brother. I know who he is, Dad. The question is, do you? What does that mean? Do you know he pays himself $520,000 a year from a company doing $35 million in revenue? Do you know he bought luxury vehicles with company money? Do you know he's been burning through capital on ego expenses while the business margins shrink? Because I know. I've been watching every quarterly report for 6 years. And when I raised concerns through my attorney, James told us to back off or find another investment. Silence on the other end. Your son is a good operator but a bad steward. He built something real, but he's been treating it like a personal ATM. And when his anonymous investor to me tried to correct course, he blew us off. So yes, I'm withdrawing. Not out of spite, but out of fiduciary responsibility to my own capital. Fiduciary responsibility, Dad repeated. That's a cold way to talk about family. James called me a freeloader. That's a cold way to talk about the sister who funded your company. We're both cold, Dad. At least I'm honest about it. I hung up. That evening, James showed up at my apartment. I watched him through the peephole. He looked terrible, unshaven, wearing the same clothes as yesterday, eyes red-rimmed. I opened the door. "Can I come in?" he asked quietly. "Sure." He walked into my small apartment and looked around the same way everyone did when they visited, surprised that someone supposedly wealthy lived in 900 square feet with IKEA furniture. "This is really where you live?" he asked. "Yes. But you're worth, what, hundreds of millions?" 340 million approximately. Mostly in investments. He sank onto my couch. "I don't understand anything anymore." I sat in the chair across from him and waited. "Why did you invest in me?" he finally asked. "If you knew I resented you, if you knew I was the way I am, why give me $2.3 million? Because you're my brother. Because you had a good business plan and no way to fund it. Because I wanted you to succeed. And the comments? The freeloader stuff? If it bothered you, why didn't you say something? Would you have listened? Or would you have accused me of lording my wealth over you?" He was quiet. "Here's the truth, James. When I sold Meridian Systems, I told the family. Remember? I was 26 and so excited. And the family response was tepid. Dad told me not to let it go to my head. Mom changed the subject. You stopped talking to me for 3 weeks. I was jealous," he admitted. "You were younger and you just made more money than I'd probably earn in my lifetime. It felt unfair. So I learned to hide. I learned that my success made you uncomfortable, made the family uncomfortable. So I became invisible. The disappointing little sister with no real job. It was easier than dealing with your resentment. That's not fair to put on me. Isn't it? Yesterday you called me a freeloader at Thanksgiving dinner. You've been making comments like that for years. You built an entire identity around being the hardworking builder while I was the lazy trust fund kid. And you never once questioned that narrative. Because you never corrected it. I shouldn't have to correct it. You're my brother. You should have asked about my life. Been curious. Supportive. Instead, you wrote me off and felt superior about it." James put his head in his hands. "What do you want from me?" "Nothing. I don't want apologies or groveling. I want you to find new investors for your company and succeed without my money. But what if I can't? What if no one will invest at the valuation I need? Then you'll have to accept lower valuation, give up more equity, or restructure. That's business, James. It's what every founder faces. But I'm your brother." "Exactly. I'm your sister. The one you called a freeloader. Family goes both ways, James. You don't get to use it as a shield after spending years using it as a weapon." He looked up at me, tears in his eyes. "I'm sorry. I'm really truly sorry. I was an asshole. I was jealous and insecure and I took it out on you. You deserved better." "Yes, I did. Is there any way you'll reconsider? Any way to fix this?" I looked at my brother, really looked at him. At the desperation in his eyes, the fear, the regret. "Maybe," I said slowly. "But not the way you want." "What does that mean?" "It means if I reinvest in Anderson Logistics, everything changes. No more luxury expenses. Your salary drops to $280,000 until the company hits $50 million in revenue. The vehicles get sold. The board gets 2 seats instead of 1 and I attend meetings openly as myself. You run the company, but you run it responsibly. And you never ever dismiss me again. Done. All of it." "I agree. I'm not finished. You also publicly acknowledge to the family and to anyone who asks that I was your founding investor. That Anderson Logistics exists because of my capital and my belief in you. No more self-made founder mythology." He flinched but nodded. "Okay. And finally, you spend the next 6 months finding other investors anyway. Because you need to diversify your capital base and I need to know you can succeed without me. If you can raise another $2 million from outside investors while I stay in, then we have a real partnership. If you can't, then maybe the company isn't as strong as you think." That's a lot." "Yes, it is. That's the cost of calling your largest investor a freeloader." He stood up. "I'll do it. All of it. I'll make this right, Alex. We'll see." After he left, I sat in my apartment for a long time, watching the sun set over Cambridge. I'd been invisible for so long. Hidden, dismissed, underestimated. And in some ways it had been easier. No family drama, no resentment, no complexity. But it had also been lonely. Exhausting. Diminishing. I was done being invisible. Over the next 2 weeks, the family dynamics shifted dramatically. My mother called 3 days after Thanksgiving. "Alex, I owe you an apology. I had no idea what you'd accomplished." "I'm proud of you, honey. I should have said that years ago." "Thanks, Mom. Why didn't you tell us?" "About the investments, the portfolio, everything." "Because when I told you about Meridian Systems, nobody cared. So I learned not to share." She was quiet for a moment. "We failed you. We were so focused on James's conventional success that we didn't see yours." "Yes, you did. Can we start over? Can I learn about your life, your work, who you actually are?" "Maybe. But it'll take time." Emma called next. "Alex, I just want you to know, I always thought you were cool. The way you lived your own life, didn't care what people thought. I didn't realize you were also a secret business genius." I laughed. "Not a genius. Just good with numbers and patient with investments." "Will you help me understand investing? I have some savings and I have no idea what to do with them." "Of course." The most surprising call came from my father. "Alexandra, I spoke with James. He told me everything, the terms you proposed, the requirements. I think you're being very fair. More than fair. I'm being businesslike." "Yes. And I think that's what James needs. Someone to hold him accountable. I haven't done that. I've just been proud of him without asking hard questions." "Why are you telling me this, Dad?" "Because I want you to know I see you now. Not as the disappointment daughter, but as the successful woman you became while we weren't paying attention. And I'm sorry it took this long." I cried after that call. Not sad tears but relief. Like a weight I'd been carrying for years had finally lifted. James spent the next month hustling. He cut his salary to $280,000. He sold both luxury vehicles, the Tesla and Range Rover, and bought a used Honda Accord. He canceled the planned leadership retreat and instead held strategy sessions in the office conference room. He also pitched investors. Lots of them. I heard about it through Richard, who was fielding calls from VCs doing due diligence. "They're impressed," Richard told me. "The business fundamentals are solid and James is being honest about the restructuring. He's telling them he got complacent and needed a wake-up call. Is anyone biting? 3 firms are interested. He might actually pull this off." On January 15th, James sent me an email. "Alex, I'm signing a term sheet tomorrow. Venture firm called Summit Partners is investing $2.5 million at a $32 million valuation. They're taking 7.8% equity. With your 30% and the new capital, Anderson Logistics is fully funded and poised for growth. Summit's terms include board oversight and quarterly reporting. They're holding me accountable, which I need. Thank you for the wake-up call. Thank you for believing in me 6 years ago. Thank you for not giving up on me now, even though I gave you every reason to. I'm telling everyone, family, employees, investors, that you were the founding angel who made this company possible. No more hiding. No more minimizing. You made Anderson Logistics happen and I'm grateful. Your brother James." I read the email 3 times, then called him. "Congratulations," I said when he answered. "Summit Partners is a good firm. Thanks to you. They said your initial investment in patient capital was one of the reasons they felt confident. Apparently they called you a smart money validator." I smiled. "I've been called worse. Alex, I know I can't undo the past 6 years. Can't take back the comments or the dismissiveness. But I want to try to be the brother you deserved all along. The one who celebrates your success instead of resenting it." "I'd like that." "Good. Because I need your advice on something. Summit wants us to consider an acquisition target, a smaller logistics company in Ohio. Would you look at the financials and tell me if it makes sense?" "You want my investment advice?" "I want my smart, successful sister's opinion. If you have time, send me the deck. I'll review it tonight." After we hung up, I sat at my desk looking out at the Cambridge skyline. My phone buzzed with a notification. Another founder wanting to pitch their startup. My calendar showed 3 pitch meetings tomorrow, a board call in the afternoon, and dinner with Emma to discuss her investment strategy. I was busy, successful, visible, and finally acknowledged. It's been 6 months since that Thanksgiving dinner. Anderson Logistics is thriving with the new capital and oversight. James is a better CEO now. More disciplined, more strategic, less ego-driven. The company is on track to hit $45 million in revenue this year. My relationship with my family has transformed. Mom calls weekly to ask about my work. Dad sends me articles about angel investing. Emma and I meet monthly to review her growing investment portfolio. And James? James is different. Better. At last month's family dinner, he introduced me to his new VP of operations as my sister Alex, the angel investor who funded Anderson Logistics. Without her, none of this exists. The VP was impressed. You're Alexandra Morrison? I've heard about you in investor circles. Your portfolio is legendary. James beamed like he was proud. Actually proud. Later he pulled me aside. You know what's funny? I spent years being jealous of your Meridian success. Resenting it. Trying to prove I was better. And the whole time, you were quietly surpassing everything I'd ever accomplish. It's not a competition, James. I know. But if it were, you'd win. He smiled. And I'm okay with that now. Better than okay. I'm proud of you. Thanks. I'm proud of you too. Even after I called you a freeloader? Especially after. You learned. You grew. That takes courage. My phone buzzed. A text from a founder I'd invested in 3 years ago. We're going public. You're about to be $47 million richer. Thank you for believing in us. I showed James the text. He whistled. 47 million on one investment? How much did you put in? 3 million. That's what 15x return? About that. He shook his head in amazement. You're ridiculously good at this. I am. And it only took you 6 years to notice. He laughed, genuine and warm. Better late than never? Better late than never. My brother called me a freeloader at Thanksgiving dinner. He was wrong. I was the foundation his entire success was built on. And now, finally, he knows it. More importantly, I know it. And I'm never being invisible again.